for life, people. You don't know things that I knew about Diddy back in the day.
He was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon and making terroristic threats.
In a jaw-dropping return to the spotlight, Wendy Williams has just dropped a bombshell. Diddy's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Yeah, you heard that right. Is this the final nail in the coffin for Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul long accused of silencing his enemies? After nearly a decade of silence, Diddy is back, but this time in federal court. And Wendy, she's not holding anything back. Her testimony isn't just about Diddy, it's a full-blown takedown of some of the most powerful names in entertainment. People who once seemed untouchable are now being dragged into the light. Wendy calls it Hollywood's unhealed wounds, and she's on a mission to expose them. We're talking about serious charges here: assault with a deadly weapon, terroristic threats, and this time, it's not just hearsay. Wendy came to court stacked. We're talking receipts, documents, witness statements, evidence that's been buried for years. She's not just telling her story, and she's tearing down an empire one piece at a time. So the big question is, what pushed Wendy, a woman the industry tried to shut out, to come back swinging like this? Is someone backing her, helping her step back into the limelight? Or is Wendy herself the key piece in a bigger plan? One that could bring down Diddy and shake the very foundation of Hollywood?
Wendy, you got fired from Hot 97 years ago because of Diddy.
On a tense May Day, as the trial of Sean Diddy Combs unfolded, the New York federal courtroom fell into a breathless silence when Wendy Williams stepped inside. Gone was the radiant glow of her former days. Her face bore the weariness of a soul long burdened, yet she stood resolute, unshaken. Perhaps because after nearly a decade of silence, Wendy Williams had endured too much. Now appearing in this courtroom, she was determined to expose the man she called the dark mogul of the music industry, Sean Diddy Combs. Under the piercing gazes of those present, Wendy Williams began, her voice low but brimming with resolve.
ISEF stayed silent for too long. ISEF endured late-night threatening calls, advertising contracts yanked without explanation, and warnings as sharp as a blade against my throat, all because I dared to speak Diddy Sep's name. But today, I have nothing left to lose.
The name Diddy has always been tied to power: a billionaire media mogul, a top-tier music producer, and a man who helped shape the careers of some of the biggest names in the industry. But according to Wendy Williams' testimony, behind all that glitz and glam lies something way darker: an organized system of abuse and control. A hidden world where anyone who dares to speak out gets silenced. Fast. Wendy looked back on her early days in radio, saying she was constantly warned not to talk about the shady stuff going on behind those wild, extravagant parties Diddy was known for. And we're not talking harmless fun here. She described scenes that sounded like something straight out of a horror movie: IV drips hanging from the ceiling, red candles flickering in the dark, young women being led into private rooms, but not before signing strict NDAs. She said, "I talked about it on air, and within a week I lost a huge advertising deal." That was her first taste of the brutal retaliation machine, and it wouldn't be the last. Through her testimony, Wendy painted a chilling picture, not just of fear and intimidation, but of psychological warfare, silent threats, isolation, a campaign to break her spirit. But it didn't stop at losing deals. She received threatening phone calls. She was even attacked by a girl group once backed by Diddy, who, according to her, were sent to rough her up right outside her radio station. And after years of this relentless pressure, Wendy's health took a major hit. Aphasia, frontotemporal dementia, devastating diagnoses that flipped her world upside down. Still, her voice didn't shake when she said, "When I spoke about Diddy, it wasn't to destroy him. I just wanted people to wake up." She said she saw it all, even back in the early 2000s, how protected he was, how people were too afraid to even say his name. "They warned me," she said. "They told me not to mention him, that I'd scare off sponsors." At first, she thought it was just talk. But then the contracts disappeared. And she got fired from her radio job.
Mogul who sent his all-girl group to beat my in front of the radio station. I love that you have, 6 kids, 3 babies' moms.
Yes, all taken care of. I met all of them in the same year, so I've known all of them the same amount of time, but we were friends.
Some say it was the years of non-stop psychological pressure from the music mogul himself that eventually broke her down. leading to Wendy Williams being diagnosed with aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, a pair of conditions that completely flipped her world on its head. "When I started talking about Diddy," Wendy said, her voice calm but firm, "I wasn't trying to destroy him. I just wanted people to finally see the truth." She claims she saw it all back in the early 2000s, how Diddy was protected, untouchable. People around her warned her not to even say his name. Why? Because it might scare away sponsors. She didn't take it seriously at first. She thought it was just industry gossip, a scare tactic. But then the calls stopped coming, contracts vanished, and eventually, she got fired from her radio job.
Last 30 days, I went out twice for my teeth, you know what I'm saying? And I want my life.
As Wendy started describing the threatening phone calls, the courtroom fell dead silent. Every eye locked onto Diddy. Before she could even finish, Sean Combs' lawyer jumped up, voice cold and sharp. "Objection! There's no solid proof those calls came from Mr. Combs. Who made them? What did they say? Does she even have recordings?" Over at the defense table, Diddy sat frozen, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. He kept his head down, but his eyes were moving, nervous, alert, exposed. This wasn't a music video. No flashing lights, no carefully curated image to hide behind. Just the courtroom, the law, and the weight of serious allegations. That famous face, the one plastered across magazines and red carpets for decades, now looked like a mask beginning to crack. Wendy gave a subtle nod. Then she signaled. A muffled recording played. A low, threatening voice echoed through the courtroom. And just like that, the silence turned into tension you could cut with a knife.
You know what? Sense is waiting for you if you keep running your mouth.
A low murmur spread through the courtroom, but it was quickly shut down with a sharp bang of the judge's gavel. Then Wendy held up a stack of worn, yellowed pages, documents aged by time, each one marked with dates and slanted, handwritten script. Every line told a story. An anonymous phone call. A contract that mysteriously vanished. Her sudden removal from a TV show right when her career was soaring. Across the room, Diddy shifted in his seat, tension written all over his body. His lawyer stood up again, this time with more edge in his tone. "Your Honor, all she's showing are personal notes. No photos, no direct witnesses. This could all be made up just to manipulate public perception." Diddy didn't say a word, but the change in his expression was clear. That signature confidence, the aura of a media kingpin, was gone. In its place, doubt. Was it aimed at Wendy? Or at the people he thought had his back? No one could say, but Wendy wasn't done. She kept going. She recalled how she was attacked backstage, not once, but twice, by girl groups trained and promoted by Diddy himself. According to her testimony, these weren't random incidents, these were deliberate. The women came at her with venom, harsh words, threats, intimidation. It wasn't just music industry drama. It felt more like a warning.
One of them grabbed my arm and said, "You know the rules, Wendy. Don't make yourself a pawn anymore," she recalled, her voice catching. "I looked into their eyes. I didn't see hatred. I saw fear. They said those things because someone made them."
You know, my family, what is the problem with me calling and talking to friends?
It was clear. Wendy stepping forward wasn't just about clearing her name. This was bigger. Much bigger. What she described, the threats, the attacks, that was just the surface, just the tip of a massive iceberg. Beneath it, she said, was a shadowy world, a place where fame was currency and obedience was the price of survival. And right at the heart of it, Wendy claimed without flinching, stood one man, Sean Diddy Combs. And she was done staying silent. When asked about Diddy's legendary parties, the ones insiders always whispered about as career-changing, Wendy let out a long breath. Then, like flipping through an old book, she opened up. "Those weren't just parties," she said, her voice low, her eyes distant, as if reliving a nightmare. "They were rituals. There was structure. There were rules. And there was silence. Paid for with ND." As she described stories she'd heard in hushed voices, from assistants, from stylists, even from nervous young singers who pulled her aside after the cameras were off. They talked about high-rise penthouses lit by red candles, scenes that felt more like sacrifices than celebrations. Some said there were 4 drips, escorts dressed like attendants. Wendy called it what she believed it was, not just partying, but power, total control over people's bodies and minds. There were private rooms, she said. Girls let in, one by one. All of them had to sign something, no questions, no eye contact, no explanations for why they were even there. Wendy said she tried to speak out, tried to bring it up on air. The result? A week later, a major sponsor pulled out. 2 weeks after that, she was suspended. By the end of the month, her seat was gone, on her own show. To her, these so-called parties weren't wild tabloid fodder, they were proof. Proof of a hidden power system, one fueled by fear, manipulation, and forced silence. In that world, young artists were pawns, dissenters, sacrifices, and people like Wendy, people who dared to even touch the darkness, were punished. Fully. They erased you, she said, not just your career, your health, your voice, your entire being. By the end of her testimony, Wendy was in tears, but not from weakness, from carrying the weight of 2 decades worth of warnings that no one listened to. You see Diddy on trial? She told the court, her voice steady. But I see something way bigger. This isn't just about what he did, it's about who let him do it. She turned and pointed at Diddy's table. You're defending one man. But behind him is a tower, built on NDAs, fear, power games, and billion-dollar deals in rooms no one's allowed to talk about. She looked at the jury, and every time someone tried to speak up, that tower crushed them. Remember that. And here's where things got even more real, because it wasn't just about Diddy. Wendy named names: Jay-Z, Tyler Perry, Oprah. People who had power, people who stayed silent. Some of them, she said, saw the abuse. They shook his hand, took the money, and helped push out anyone who dared to ask questions. Wendy ended her testimony with the same unapologetic fire that once made her a radio legend. 10 years ago, they called me crazy. Now, I'm proven right, and I'll tell you what, I'd rather be right in hell than silent in heaven. She locked eyes with Diddy. You thought I'd back down. You thought your power was untouchable, but now you're facing consequences. The law's coming for you. Then she stepped down. But before walking out, she left the room with one last line. This trial isn't the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of a day when people stop being afraid. And that tower you built, it's coming down. The room went still. The trial continued. Diddy stayed quiet in front of cameras. His legal team denied everything, called Wendy's story the delusions of someone who had it all and lost herself. But let's be honest. Everyone knew what was really on trial here. Not just one man, but a system. An entire culture of silence, baked deep into the entertainment industry. A world where fame bought silence, and money rewrote the truth. Wendy Williams, once dismissed as nothing more than a gossip queen, was now the first voice to break that silence. Whether Diddy walks free or ends up convicted, one thing's for sure, Wendy rang a bell that can't be unrung. This isn't just about whether he's guilty. The real question is, can one woman with nothing but her truth bring down an empire built on lies?